Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dr. Downey and today we are going to talk about your diet and acne. So this is just a follow-up on a previous video I made about treating your acne. That was more pharmacological. I did mention diet briefly, but in this video we are going to be looking at the latest research. So I am going to share with you one of the most recent papers that was published this year, which is a systematic review on your diet and acne and how your diet impacts acne. So for those who don't know, a systematic review in basic terms is just a collection of all that's been published on the topic, and they come to a conclusion after they essentially summarize a whole bunch of studies. So this is one of the highest forms of evidence. So I just wanted to release this video also because there are a lot of videos on the internet about your diet and acne, and most of the time it's anecdotal, or sometimes it's someone who follows a specific diet trying to promote their own diet as an appropriate tool to combat acne. As some of you may know, I am vegan or plant-based. However, I will keep my views as objective as possible and just report the science as it is, because I'm not here to convince you of one thing or the other. So this paper is called Diet and Acne, a Systematic Review. So if we look back in terms of all the data that has ever been published on your diet and acne, what was quite commonly found in previous papers is that the higher your IGF-1 levels are, your postprandial IGF-1 levels, that's your IGF-1 levels after eating, the more likely you are to develop acne. Obviously, correlation and causation don't match, but this hypothesis led to them testing out various foods that are known to spike your IGF-1 levels. And things that are known to do that are high glycemic index foods such as sugars, and dairy is also known to increase your IGF-1 levels. Of more interest to bodybuilders, whey protein is actually linked to quite high spikes in IGF-1 levels, and so is soy protein. Other protein powders haven't really been linked to that. So in fact, whey protein may be a tad bit beneficial if you're looking to build muscle, because those who are not bodybuilders might not know that IGF-1 is involved in muscle protein synthesis. Also, another thing to note is the higher your resting insulin levels are, the more likely you are to develop acne. Now, we are all well aware by now that Western diets are no good at anything. Well, I mean, they may taste good, but that's pretty much it. What they cause a myriad of problems, and one of those issues is acne. So a Western diet tends to consist of a lot of high glycemic index foods, a lot of fats and processed foods, things like that. And this was quite well demonstrated in a study of these tribes in South America. And now these tribes originally were consuming low GI or glycemic index foods, such as tubers, which are like starches, meats, and essentially foraged foods, fish, things like that. And what was interesting to note is that acne was not found in any of these participants. However, as soon as they were put on a Western diet, they seemed to have outbreaks of acne. So this started the whole hypothesis into the Western diet and what exactly in the Western diet is causing acne. So in this study, they found that it was two things primarily. Well, they looked at these two factors primarily because they've been researched the most, and that is the glycemic index of foods as well as dairy. Another thing to note is that this systematic review did include a variety of different races and cultures. So we won't be subject to bias in that regard. However, most of the participants, approximately 2/3 were women and 1/3 were men. So this just means there isn't as much data on men, but that doesn't mean that this doesn't hold true for men. So what did they find? Well, first they looked at the glycemic content of food. And what they concluded was that high glycemic index foods, such as your sugars, are very well linked to acne. They found that the high glycemic index and increased glycemic loads of certain diets exacerbated underlying acne and created new acne for individuals. But what was interesting to note is that on stopping this high glycemic foods and replacing them for low glycemic index foods such as your starches and things like that, they actually had better outcomes. A few participants found that their acne resolved, or at least improved. Also to note is that these findings were found in every country and every region they studied, so this conclusion can be held across all possible population groups. Now we get to dairy and acne. So dairy is quite commonly pointed out as being one of those acneogenic foods, and there might be some credit to this. But in this systematic review, they found out a little bit more about dairy's link to acne. In fact, they had a lot of mixed evidence, but what they could conclude is that dairy might exacerbate acne in European or individuals who have already adopted a Western diet. So that means if you already have a Western diet and you start consuming dairy, it could exacerbate your underlying acne. However, what they found out, which was interesting, is that in non-Western countries or countries that weren't consuming this Western diet, dairy didn't have much of an impact on acne. So this is the importance of representing all population groups, because not every finding will be the same for every single cultural group. Obviously, the study has its limitations and is flawed because it's incredibly difficult, especially in observational studies, to make sure that each participant is following the diet laid out to them, or that they're consuming exactly what you want them to consume. And it's been found out in many other studies that dietary adherence in studies is actually not as high as one might think. So overall, the effect of diet on acne is highly variable. And we perhaps need longer cohort trials or a few more randomized control trials until we can come to definitive conclusions. Because although we do know that glycemic index from the study did increase the risk of acne, and it did reach statistical significance, it wasn't as acneogenic as one might think. And that is important to know, because whilst you might be eating perfectly fine and not avoiding dairy, high glycemic foods, but you still have bad acne, you should just know that diet isn't the be-all and end-all to your acne problems. And that's because it has a small impact on your acne. However, some may argue, if you looked at these previous trials on groups in Southern America who were not consuming a Western diet and eating very whole foods and clean, as one might say, the incidence of acne was very low. But at the same time, you cannot conclude that it's purely diet, since lifestyle and lifestyle habits are also different. So don't draw conclusions from correlation. And that's one of the biggest things you should take from this video. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you gained some knowledge about diet and its effect on acne and how little of a role it does actually play in acne. But I hope you found it entertaining nonetheless, and let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching.